Okay, selamat siang semua. Siang. Okay, thank you Kak Rumi ya untuk introduction ya, and thanks for letting me have the honor personally to introduce our esteemed panelists to this stage. Ternyata bahasa Indonesia Kak Rumi itu lebih lancar dari saya ya. But okay, so starting with our first panelist. Our first panelist worked in his current company for over 25 years. Ya, coba bayangin ya. Building brands with purpose across multiple markets including Asia, Africa, and Oceania. In his current capacity today, leads insights, media, content, and e-business transformation as the communications director of Nestlé Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. Guy Kellaway. Thank you, Mr. Guy. Our second panelist has had a mix of marketing experiences across several industries, including fintech, advertising, mobile tech solutions, and telecommunications. In his prior role, he headed ATL, digital media, and analytics, and today is leading the digital transformation team, which oversees over 20 different touch points for PT XL Axiata. Please welcome to the stage, Bapak Reza Mirza. Alright. Cool, our third panelist began her career as a software engineer, but today comes equipped with over 20 years in experience specialized in customer experience, including customer service across banking, real estate, telecommunications, and today, e-commerce. Currently overseeing an operation consisting of over 100 people that to drive up customer satisfaction, net promoter scores, and business profitability. She is today the Director of Customer Experience at JD.ID. A round of applause, please, for Ibu Maneesha Bhusal. Kawan ya. Thank you. Okay. And our final panelist, an expert in everything AdTech and MarTech, spent about a decade in a global advertising agency network based out of London and Sydney. Not Dentsu. That's okay. It's in the past. We'll move on. But then went on to spend the last 6 years growing through several regional roles in the largest CM provider in the world. Currently ASEAN's regional VP of Commerce, Cloud, and Digital 360 at Salesforce, and who I'm meeting for the first time today in the flesh. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Chris Jordan, aka Jordy. Cool, okay. Ya, ganteng juga ya orangnya. Pertama kali lihat jealous gue. Okay, so let's get straight into it. I have a few questions that are for multiple panelists over here across the brand specifically, but also a couple which are very industry specific. Now, I think before we dive into the future of CX, I think it's be really good to kind of get a glimpse of the presence first with the audience here today. So our first question is, before we address the future, let's give our audiences, a glimpse of the present. How important is CX considered in your organization in relation to driving brand loyalty and competitive advantage? And how has that changed or evolved over the past couple of years? Maybe we'll start off with you, Guy, representing Nestlé.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So I think have been just talking previously with the other panelists, and CX is in itself nothing new. It's just now being labeled as something. In FMCG, and particularly in food and beverage, I think the original CX or consumer experiences when you hold and you actually consume a product, right? So it's always been at the heart of whatever we do. We just have to now think of it always still through the lens of the brand and the consumer, but across multiple different touch points, and how the consumer is engaging with the brand. Particularly with digital and all the online, offline, channel-less as we're now calling it, keeping it consistent and making sure that you're grabbing that attention to get that brand engagement is definitely going to be the key to how you make your brands more competitive. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you. So yeah, it's interesting because it's saying that you may not necessarily have a division or resources that are dedicated to CX per se, but it's kind of part and parcel of your brand experience overall. I think that'd be an interesting question to follow up maybe through with Maneesha, because I mean, as head of CX or the director of CX in JD, it sounds like you have a dedicated department or a division and a practice just solely focused on customer experience. So why is it like that for you, and how does that drive brand loyalty and competitive advantage for JD? How has that evolved over the past couple of years?
Thank you, Arshad. So we are a retailer and a e-commerce. So putting customer first is simply saying it's in our DNA. We don't have a choice. Price, value, service, these things are important. There's no doubt about it. But it's the customer experience, overall customer experience, that can turn a normal casual browser into a brand advocate or a committed brand advocate. That's where our brand loyalty plays a very big part. Now, having said that, this is pre-pandemic, but having said that, post-pandemic, two things really evolved in our e-commerce, especially in our business. And one is employee experience. It became significantly important. We had to acknowledge that CX and EX goes hand in hand. I mean, most likelihood, they are our first customers, and they are the one who create the brand strategy. They are the one who execute the brand strategy. So having disengaged employees, we cannot expect a stellar customer experience. So that really changed after post-pandemic. Second most important thing that was that post-pandemic really evolved in e-commerce, and especially for JD.ID, was the personalization. One size fits all had to go away for us. During pandemic, it was a hard lesson learned. And now our core competency is about finding the target audience. It's technically impossible to serve everyone, make every customer happy online. So core competency is about finding target customers and providing personalized services around those group of customers. So that is second thing I would say that really changed and brought customer experience, and as a result, the brand loyalty, customer retention to the next level.
Right, fantastic. Now, maybe over to you, Reza from Excel. What's the structure in your organization like, as opposed to Nestlé and JD, right? I mean, you lead the digital transformation team. Does a CX division exist separately? And if so, what do they do? How many people they are at versus your team?
Yeah. Firstly, before going there, I just want to tell you that before the pandemic, Excel was always going to go towards our main objective is actually to be number one in terms of telco within Indonesia. After the pandemic, now we have a new objective. It actually be number one converged telco in Indonesia, but with the highest NPS score. So that's how the mindset changed from not thinking at all for CX to actually thinking more. So what actually happened to our organization? We do have a separate CX team to actually monitor that. We're actually starting from year to year since the pandemic, actually investing more from year to year. Their budget's actually going much more. And we're getting more, hiring more talents that actually understand CX and actually identifying new tools and new ways to actually improve the customer experience.
Got it. But you're saying like CX for you guys actually kind of started during the pandemic, is that correct? Like pre-pandemic, there was no CX division. It was just something that kind of like started.
Even the vision or the objective of the company changed from not thinking about CX at all, and now it's one of our KPIs.
Got it. Okay, yeah. So a lot of different variations across different organizations. Definitely no one size fits all, even in terms of practicing CX overall, I suppose. Let me hear from a technology provider instead. Data and technology plays, that's what we feel, plays a very, very crucial role, in the overall CX transformation, for brands. But given that technology can often be seen as a rather hefty investment. I mean, Salesforce, not exactly the cheapest platform on the planet, is it? So what kind of sort of best practices have you seen applied, how brands can kind of like adopt this, and what you've seen across the region?
Well, I was going to start by saying it's nice to see you, Arshad, but I might take that back after that comment. But it is very nice to actually meet in person. Arshad and I have spent the last 2 years talking on Zoom calls, and he's actually taller than I thought, which is often the opposite when you've been on people's calls the whole time. So, but in answer to your question, look, I think one of the things that we see a lot is people coming to Salesforce, for example, or I'm sure other technology vendors, and saying, hey, I need X, right? like a CDP, or I need a personalization tool, as Maneesha was just mentioning, or this or that. And for us, I think the first question back is why? Because I think too often, when we're thinking about technology, we're thinking about technology in the sake of a hype curve, or why, the latest fad, or the next thing you need, metaverse, NFTs, whatever it may be. And ultimately, the most important thing is that you just mentioned price, right? But actually, it's value. And I think what I would say back to that is, what are you trying to solve at a business problem level or a customer experience problem level? That's what we're talking about, right? If you're buying technology for the sake of features and functions, you're not laddering it back to a strategy around a business challenge or a consumer experience challenge. And that gap that we're seeing between those two would be the thing that I'd be thinking about first. So I think when you think about the technology kind of adoption, it needs to be one part of the golden triangle, as I like to call it, of people, process, and tech. And tech tends to be the last piece, right? It shouldn't be tech first. It should be business challenge first, and then who are the people I can put behind this? What's the training and change management enablement needed? What are the processes that need to happen to get that working? And then the bedrock and the vehicle behind that is technology. And so I think where it goes wrong is probably thinking, let's talk about technology. Whereas actually what we should be saying is, let's talk about a business challenge or a customer experience gap.
Yeah, I think that's well put. I think it would be too idealistic to kind of feel and sort of hope that, okay, all brands can kind of adopt technology top down, spend a couple of $1 million, and then just adopt everything and see what happens after. You're saying, let's hear the business use case first, and then kind of figure out, okay, what kind of technology is relevant for that, or even not, looking at golden triangle of people and process as well. I think, yeah, maybe Maneesha, from your point of view, seeing that you're doing this for 20 years, technology obviously has evolved, over time, over the past couple of decades. Beyond technology, beyond data, what are the other elements of CX, that brands should kind of be looking into, as opposed to being overly obsessive, surrounding technology in itself?
Thanks, Darshan. First of all, I agree that Salesforce is not cheap, yeah, so it's super expensive.
But you're an adopter. You buy it. You use it.
No, we have it. It's expensive. Yeah. So, first of all, yes, technology can be a very hefty investment, and JD.ID is not spared for that as well. I mean, we face that budget problems or restrictions all the time. I think first is I'm a firm notion that I have is that regardless of capabilities or circumstances or even the budget, every customer problem can be solved. Now, I totally agree to what Chris said, that not start the conversation with technology or even with data, to be honest. Sorry for that, but yeah, that's the last thing in the business. First is listen to the customers. Like that's what we deploy, is that we sit on tons and tons, not just us. I am part of a customer experience community globally, and I can see that a lot of us sit on tons and tons of data, but we don't read it. Customers still go unheard of. So number one that we deploy very carefully is just listen to the customers. So we have a dedicated VOC team. Second is, once you have all this unified single view of information from customers, doesn't have to be customer service complaint, can be social sentiments, can be just seeing the trend, what's happening in the market. It already gives you enough information of why people don't come to our platform. And then mapping that to the user journey. Once you have that mapping, and then after that comes the prioritization. Now, a lot of prioritization tools are available in the market, but most important would be just identify people, process, technology, culture, separate that technology into manual versus non-manual, separate it between saying quick fixes versus non-fix. So we have a very nice framework of always analyzing that feedback and then put it back saying that, okay, do we really want to do it? And what is the cost of doing it? So benefit to cost ratio. And then the last thing is, very simply, we really follow through, is fail fast. Because you are not going to have the best customer experience for every single customer. It is just not possible.
Yeah.
So we have to be very pragmatic about what do we want to fix, why do we want to fix, and when do we want to fix. So we always fail fast, success fast. So yeah, if you have to train, I'll give you a quick example. If you want to train like 100 people and we find people issue, let's not train 100 people, it's too expensive. Let's train 10 people, try it for 10 days, 15 days. If it's successful, then you can go ahead and train 100 people. And same goes for technology, same goes for process, and same goes for culture as well.
Yep, interesting. So yeah, I think Jory was touching a lot a bit on, listening to the business problem and you're kind of adding on another layer to that, whereby let's listen to customers, beyond that, and you can't be overly greedy and say, let's listen to 10 million customers. Let's start off with a small pool, a small segment first, and kind of scale up from there. Interesting, thank you. Speaking of data, let's expand a bit on data over here. And I want to touch this upon starting with Nestlé. With such a broad portfolio of CPG brands under your belt, I can only imagine how challenging, it must be to kind of obtain data of consumers, of your customers. From a Nestlé point of view, how do you plan to improve, customer experience, knowing that you have so limited data on hand of your customers?
Yeah, I think I'm envious of other panelists who have, your own platforms, and so you have an incredible source of that customer data. Whereas where we really try and make sure that we're collecting data in the right place is our own platforms, of course. And that means then that the customer experience on our websites or whatever it may be has to be really first class, because if you're trying to collect first party data, then it has to be frictionless, there has to be a value exchange, etc. But it doesn't also all have to be first party data that's identified, right? Also, there's a lot of tools that we use regardless of the brand across our websites, just to make sure, obviously, that the experience is good enough, that we're constantly optimizing it or optimizing them in that case. And then, of course, there's working with second and third party partners also to build up really strong online, I would say, profiles, so that then that level of personalization you can still get through. Of course, we've got cookie lists coming up, so really doing a lot of test and learn now in terms of how are we going to manage and what is it going to look like post that as well. So yeah, but at the end of the day, if you're trying to drive this engagement and attention and ultimately data, you have to make sure that it's at the interest of what the consumer wants and at the intersection of what they want, the platform that you're on, and what you've got to offer.
Yep. So I suppose it's not to say that if you don't have first-party data, then you can't do personalization at all, you can't improve customer service at all, customer experiences. There are a lot of partners that you work. Nestlé does a lot on e-commerce, for instance, and those are partners that you kind of work with, second-party and third-party. So that's a very interesting point of view. But I suppose maybe Jordi, you kind of add on to that. Surely with a lot of clients that you kind of deal with, those with a truckload of data versus clients who don't have any data at all. What kind of suggestions do you have, to clients, like especially in the CPG space? How can you implement technology or drive transformation for CX with very limited first-party data?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I think something we see a lot. And I think we'll talk about CPG in a moment, but I think it's probably true to say that most businesses, regardless of platform and technology first, et cetera, struggle with data, right? The reality is that single view of the customer that we've all talked about for almost 20 years now is not easy to do. I think it's very kind of, to be transparent, everyone kind of often thinks that there's this silver bullet that they can just deploy, and then all of a sudden I have this beautiful picture of Arshad, right? I know everything about it. The reality is it's harder to do, right? Data is in all sorts of shapes and formats and sizes, and it is complex to do it. But I think the other thing with data, which I think has always been a challenge, and I heard someone earlier on a panel talking about left and right-hand side of the brain, talking about emotion and rational, and as consumers, and I often think about data in the same way. We have this weird fixation with data, and we block creativity, right? So we don't think about data in a creative way. We think about creativity, and we think about data. And quite a lot of the time, we're set up for different people to do those roles. And so for me, when we think about brands like CPG, we had a customer in the US that did an amazing experiment, similar to Nestlé, and they did breakfast cereals. Now, obviously, they didn't sell direct to consumer. Typically, they sold via distributors, et cetera, and the marketplaces. So they said, okay, well, we'll do an employee or a consumer engagement program where we'll ask people how they like to mix, which ingredients they want mixed in their muesli, right? So people would go on and they would vote. And by tracking this data, it wasn't about necessarily finding that first-party data. They used that data, yes, to collect some of that consumer first-party data, but they then worked out, okay, people from this geolocation are buying more of these ingredients. Now we can optimize our supply chain and our distribution. And that was seen as a consumer data collection policy, but actually allowed them to streamline other parts of the business in a very creative and smart, data-driven way. So I think the kind of big learning is think creatively about how you can collect and then use that data.
That's very interesting. So you're talking about, yeah, customer data aside, there's like data can look into your sales data, transactional data, how is it broken down by region, where are more ingredients being sold in which cities, and you can you can take technology, apply machine learning into that, and you kind of use that kind of optimize. These are like a lot of great ideas I could use to kind of pitch to clients. Yeah, guy, a lot of good ideas over here you can buy. Yeah, sure, cool. Talk about over coffee. All right, cool. Yeah, on the flip side, we spoke a bit about limitation in data. Excel. On the flip side, you must sit on a gold mine, amount of data. I'm quite scared to ask you what kind of data that you have. Can you share with the audiences here today, an example or a case study? In the event you sit on so much data, how has your organization or your team used this data to kind of boost customer experiences? And more importantly, how has that resulted in a positive business outcome more than anything else?
Yeah. So as a telco, we do have a back-end data, right? So everyone that actually bought an internet package, we know exactly how many data you used, what apps are you opening and how long, and how long you've been consuming data in there. What apps are you? What music apps, movie apps that you're actually using. So we know exactly all your behavior within that. So using those data, usually we actually have internal tools called MCCM, where we use it to actually give personalized offerings towards our customers through our app. But we also using another tools called More Engage to actually do personalized offering within the app itself. But by combining those in-app data with our back-end data, it becomes more richer. So outside of that, by combining that with also like a A/B testing tool like Optimizely, we use it to actually optimize the journeys within the app. So by having this combination before the pandemic, or when we actually started the pandemic, or for example, my Excel, we only had like 8 million monthly active users. By the end of the pandemic, which is almost 2 years, we already reached around 12 million. And I think we're going up to 13 million monthly active users right now. So what we know is that by having a lot of monthly active users, it actually equals to revenue. So since we started to concentrate on this on year to year, we actually increased our target revenue in quarter 3, not quarter 4. So I think that's the benefit.
All right, good.
So outside of that, we're going to the next step further. So we're not only using our backend data, we're combining with our apps data, we're combining with even our customer service complaints data, and by doing all this, we actually can know exactly, using the CDP tool, we know exactly if a person do a complaint in the customer service, once they actually enter our apps or maybe enter our website, we said, hey, next time if you want to complain, try to complain through our app. So if a person actually saw one of our ads and then actually click on it, once they go to our website, then we actually know this person already clicked in this ad, and we give them that certain offering. So we know this person, even though all across touchpoint is a single user.
Yeah, I think that's the definite ideal. I think it can be quite frustrating, I guess, for me as a user, if I see an ad, for a certain package and whatnot, or customer services call me, made that offer, I said no, but then I kind of still see it being offered to me in the app. It can be quite frustrating. So that's really good. You have it all in one place. I want to shift over a bit into Maneesha. I mean, you are also sitting on a gold mine of data, also very rich with data, but quite curious. In 2018, I started reading some articles about how JD started opening offline stores. Can you share a bit about, what's the intention, what's the business strategy behind that as to why JD as an e-commerce is kind of expanding into the physical space and into offline stores, and how has that impacted your overall customer experience? Did it enrich it? Did it make it more complex? Or what's it really for?
It will be a diplomatic answer, yeah, Arshad.
Oh, come on, Maneesha, it's a safe space over here. Yeah, the recording. Oh, yeah, the recording. Yeah. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So, it's, from a customer experience standpoint, there's no doubt that offline business, financial suicide, to be honest. So, it's very critical for the companies to go into offline business, open the stores. They need to be very mindful of what categories they want to offer the offline stores for, which products will be put on the shelf, which area the stores will be available. And what kind of customers do you expect to walk into the stores to buy? Uh, Again, on the hindsight, the both offline and online can actually complement each other. So it's like they can be a traffic puller, user convenience, there's no doubt about it. And last is the margins. I mean, they can complement each other when it comes to the profit margins. I mean, JD.ID, when we went into offline stores, we kind of followed through these principles before we stepped into this part of the business.
Okay, interesting. Guys, I think we're just about running out of time in a bit, but I think I just want to get a one-liner, and advice from all the panelists over here. The future of CX, right? Your fearless forecast. Start with you, Maneesha, since we're on you already. What's the next big thing for you, within the CX space? What's important and urgent, that you need. What's the next big project that you're going to do from a customer experience standpoint? And then after that, we'll kind of follow up with the rest of the panelists. Again, as an advice for all the brands over here today.
Very nice. Thanks for the question, Asha. I mean, that's the discussion I was having with the peers here back door. I think number one would be the education of customer experience. More and more I see customer experience has become a joke in this market, honestly speaking. Customer service is being tagged as customer experience, and customer service is nowhere to closer to customer experience. Design is considered as customer experience, which is also not the truth. So number one for us, even as a JD.ID, and not just at JD.ID, but even as an individual, I started visiting universities here, educating the fresh graduates of what customer experience really stands for, what does it entail. That's number one, is the education to the market. And second is, I think there is still a huge gap of the expectations from the management of what CX can do. So we ourselves, I take pride in that customer experience department. We generate about almost 10% of the revenue. Just one department alone, we contribute towards the annual revenue of that much. And CX can contribute a lot from the GMV standpoint. The question is, how do you empower the CX? And for us, JD.ID, we have not, whatever success we have seen here in Indonesia, we are trying to replicate that in other regions of JD.com. So that we can embrace, educate, and make CX a profit center. It is not customer service, it's not passive, it's pure profit center. And that's technically what we are planning for next 6 months, is really buckle up and step up into the department for that.
Awesome. CX as profit center. Jordi, what about you? Fearless forecast.
I think the clue's in the name, right? Customer. I think we're in the era of the customer. And I think the customer's demands come first. I think for a long time, we as brands, and particularly in marketing and customer experience, pushed towards them. They now control us, right? And in every sense, from media to the experience. And brand is no longer a message we portray. It's the sum of the experiences the consumer has. And I think that's the way that I would be thinking about kind of future-proofing, is understanding what customers want. How do you make it frictionless for them and make it easy? And how do you build trust in an era where trust is becoming a bit of a blurred line, and create a value exchange? You can't build the trust if you can't create a value exchange with consumers and the brand.
Yeah,
there's my 1 minute.
And trust, fantastic. And over to you, Guy.
Yeah, I'm just going to compliment also what Maneesha is saying, because internally, ultimately, we have to be aligned. We're good at working in silos across different functions, and this is where it will really work, because then you can be seen as consistent to the consumer. And only if you're consistent to the consumer across whatever platform, whatever touch point, then your experience for the consumer is going to be all the more richer for it. So internal alignment for then external consistency.
Yeah, okay. From an organizational perspective first, fantastic. And just to close off, Reza, fearless forecast before we close it up.
Yeah, I think all the panelists already said everything, right? So I think in order to make all of this happen, I do believe that you need the tools. Or you need a solution to make sure you actually understand how to actually get their trust. What is their problem, and what is the solution for them? Yeah. I think that's the only thing I can add.
Right, tools like Salesforce, yeah. Okay, got it. Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you so much for the audience for listening to us, and to our fellow panelists for joining us here today. Thank you so much, and we'll move on to the next session. Thank you.